Hello guys, how are you? Hope you're doing fine. I'm here, Stephen Aira Juma, a teacher of maths and chemistry from Sheikh Khalid Group of Schools. I just want us to learn maths. Today I want us to look at one question that is on the board. The question talks about solving a quadratic equation that is x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals to 0. We are told to solve it by method number 1, factorization, method number 2, completing square method, and method number 3, quadratic formula. So I'll do this question in these 3 ways, or using these 3 methods, starting with the first one. The first one is factorization method. So by factorization, we will start by writing the equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals to 0. Then we have to look for 2 things. One is the product and the other one is sum. How do we get the product? The product is given by A multiplied by C. And to make you understand this, in a quadratic equation, we have we have ax, that is ax squared plus bx plus c equivalent to 0. So when I say AC, I mean the coefficient there and the constant there. So again, we go, sum is given by the b. B gives us the sum. B gives us the sum. So in the upper question here, our product would be given by a 1 times a 6, which gives us our product to be 6. And then our sum would be given by the b, where our b is actually 5, and it is positive 5. After getting the product and the sum, what you're required to do is actually get 2 factors that when you sum them up, you get a 5, and when you multiply them, you get a 6. So that gives us a chance to look at the factors that gives us 6. One is 1 and 6. The other case we have is 2 and 3. Out of these 2, remember our sum is positive and our product is also positive. So none of them can be negative. And for that matter, because 6 plus 1 would give us a 7. If we placed a negative next to 1, we would have a sum of 5, but the product would be a negative 6. So whichever the case, the 6 and 1 cannot work. And therefore, which factors do we remain with? We remain with factor 3 and factor 2. If we take 2 multiplied by 3, we get 6. And if we take 2 added to 3, we get 5. Therefore, these 2 factors are normally used to split the b into 2. And therefore, if I was to apply that, what you're supposed to do next is write the x squared, say plus 5x, just as you said, plus 6 is equals to 0. Then you say where we have the 5, we want to split it into 2. And the 2 parts we want to split it into the 2 and 3. And therefore we can say that x squared plus 2x plus 5, sorry, not plus 5, but plus 3x plus 6 is equivalent to 0. Now, what have we done? We have taken the b part, where we have the x power 1, and divided it into 2, splitted it into 2. We have a 2x and a 3x, which when added just gives us the 5x. Why are we doing this? So that we can factorize by grouping. Now, if you look at this keenly, you would see that you have an x squared plus a 2x plus a 3x plus a 6, which is equals to 0. Now, we can factorize this by grouping. There is the first group there, and there is the other group there. And if you look at them, you'll find that there is something common for both of them. I'll take it to the other page. And if I was to take this to the other page, we would have there the first part, x is common. And so we can say x out. Then we take the x squared divided by x, we get x. The positive 2x divided by x, we get a positive 2. That is the first part. The second part, what is common is 3. There is a 3 in 3x and there is a 3 in 6. And therefore we can say there plus 3 into, again, x plus 2. Then we finally equate it to 0. After equating it to 0, there is a common bracket we are seeing. And therefore to factorize, we would say there that it is x plus 3 into x plus 2, one of the brackets, and we get them to 0. When you reach this point, it simply means that this bracket multiplied by this other bracket gives you a 0. And it simply means one of these brackets is actually a 0. And therefore we can say that x plus 3 is equal to 0, or we can also say that x plus 2 could also be equal to 0. And if that is true, we can solve both cases. We can solve both cases and get the value of x. So therefore, here we can say that x equals to negative 3, or we can also say on this side that x becomes negative 2, and therefore we can solve by saying x is equals to negative 3 or negative 2. Now, the values you are getting, that is negative 3 and negative 2, are referred to as the roots of the quadratic equation, roots of the quadratic equations. The two brackets we get, that is x plus 3 and x plus 2, these ones are normally known as factors. So we have gotten two factors, x plus 3, x plus 2. Those are two factors. That is why we call this method the factorization method. Now, you can also try this for yourself here. So you can solve, we put a line there. You can solve x squared plus 7x plus 12 is equals to 0 by factorization. So try this on your own, but the answers you should get is that x, these are the answers. The roots, in other words, the roots you get is that x is equals to negative 3 or negative 4. These are the values you're supposed to get. So use the factorization method and make sure you get the answers as negative 3 or negative 4, two roots for that equation. Now, remember we said it's supposed to be factorization method, completing square method, then quadratic formula. So these methods must all give us the same values. So I would want to wrap this again and start the completing square method. Now, by completing square method, which is a bit different from the other one, but we get the same values. It cannot give us different values. So let's go to completing square method. So we're saying by completing square method. This is now method number 2. Now for us here in method number 2, we'll again rewrite the equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equivalent to 0. Now, you're in exam and the question is this, and you're told by completing square method. What do? The first thing you do, or the first thing you're required to do, is to assume that the c given, that is the 6 here, is not the actual c for a complete square. And therefore, what do you first do? You say x squared plus 5x is equivalent to, you take the 6 to the other side, and it becomes negative 6. So the first assumption is that the constant given just after the a and the b, the c given, is not making this a perfect square, and therefore you pass it to the other side, and after passing it to the other side, you have a part that is incomplete, that you're supposed to complete as a square. But even before you complete it, would want us to agree on one thing. In this question that I'm dealing with here, the value of A is actually 1. In this question, the value of A is 1 because we have just agreed that ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0 is the format of a quadratic equation. And if that is the format, you are sure, and we are sure here, that the value of A is actually 1 because there is no any other number next to the x squared. So the coefficient is 1. So all these things I'm doing here is because the coefficient is already 1. That is the coefficient of the x squared. So after doing it, what is the next thing you're supposed to do? After doing that, the next thing you're supposed to do is complete the square to get the actual c for x squared plus 5x. What is the actual c? And so how do you do it? Now, if A is 1, we always say if A is 1, if A is equals to 1, we say there that the c will always be given by b over 2 all squared for a complete square. Are we there? So the c for a perfect square is gotten by b over 2 squared, and that is only when A is 1. And so if that is true, then we can say that our x squared there plus our 5x gives us our b to be 5. So our b is 5. So we take our b, which is 5, correct? Divide it by 2. Then after dividing it by 2, we square. And when we do so, whatever we have just created is a c to complete the square. But remember, on the other side of the equation, there was a negative 6, correct? On this side, this is a new thing. The 5 over 2 squared is a new thing. It wasn't here. So it is bringing an imbalance in our equation. And because it is bringing an imbalance in our equation, because we have added it on this side, to cancel it out, we need to add the same on the other side. And therefore, what would we do? We would say it is 5 over 2 all squared. Why are we doing that? We have added this on this side that wasn't there. So to cancel it out, we add it on the other side. The same thing that we had on this side, we had on the other side to cancel off, so that in real sense, what we have at the end of it is that we still have our x squared plus 5x is equals to negative 6. So adding this here is cancelled by adding that. But we don't remove them because they help us get the root. Now, in simplified form, what do they become? This becomes x squared plus 5x plus 2.5 bracket squared, that is 5 over 2 is the same as 5 divided by 2, you get 2.5. And on the other side, you get negative 6 plus the same 2.5 all squared. Now, when you reach that point, again, we want to just proceed. So let's agree on one thing here. I want us to not to expand this, but expand the other side of the equal sign. So if I was to rewrite that, I would rewrite that as x squared plus 5x plus 2.5, the way it is, without squaring it. But on this other side where we have negative 6 plus 2.5 all squared, I want us to interfere with this. How do we interfere with it? I'll just repeat this because this is x squared 5x plus 2.5 all squared equals to negative 6. Allow me get the value of this. And if you take 2.5 squared, it simply gives you 6.25. So that is 25 times 25, giving you 625. That's 2 decimal places, because when you have 2.5 times 2.5, the 2 decimal places that are there. So you assume the decimals and multiply, you get 625, bring back the 2 decimal places, you get 6.25. Now, if we simplify this further, this becomes x squared plus 5x plus 2.5 squared, not changed, still the same way, but on this other side, if your math is correct, this tells you have a debt of 6, then you get 6.25 shillings, you pay the debt, and what you remain with is a positive 0.25. Correct? Now, when you reach this point, now we want to get the root for this perfect square. The root for this perfect square is gotten by taking the root of x squared, which is x, and the root for 2.5 squared, which is just positive 2.5. So we take that there, plus the sign. There is no sign here, meaning it is positive. So that is why I'm saying positive 2.5. Then all these, put it in bracket and put a square. What does it mean? If you square this, you get the whole of this. If you square this, you get the whole of this. So the square root of this is this. And so this squared gives you that. It should be the same as 0.25 on the other side. When you reach that point, it takes you to a point where you're now supposed to say the x plus 2.5 squared being equal to 0.25. You can simplify it by getting square roots on both sides. When I get the square root of x plus 2.5 squared, the square root just becomes x plus 2.5. On this other side, the square root of this will always be a plus or minus. A plus or minus. And that is a square root of 0.25 gives you 0.5. Gives you 0.5. You can use your calculator to confirm, but it will give you 0.5. But remember, anytime you're getting the square root of a number, it is always a positive or a negative of the value you get. Now, after getting this, we can pick and get values of x in two ways. The first way we would go about it is picking x plus 2.5. Remember, this should go to the other side. And so if I took x remaining there, then I said equal sign is there, and I picked the positive side of 0.5, and I say positive 0.5, then what are we doing? We are subtracting, because when positive 2.5 crosses the equal sign to the other side, it's supposed to be subtracted, and so we're subtracting 2.5. If you simplify this, you discover that x is equals to a negative 2, because you have 0.5, and you're supposed to subtract 2.5. Then the other side you can take is that, that is to get the other value of x is by doing what? Still 2.5 crosses to the other side, but this time round it interacts with what? The negative of 0.5. So we are saying negative of 0.5. So we took this first, now we are taking negative 0.5, and therefore we are again subtracting 2.5. So you have a debt of 0.5, again you're adding another debt of 2.5. That means you get x to be negative 3. And so if you look at them keenly, then we can simplify there and simply say the roots are negative 2 or negative 3. So the two roots we are getting are those two. Again, this is the completing square method. And to make it simple and make sure that you know what you're doing, you can try again to solve. You can try again to solve another one by completing square method. And the equation I'll give you is similar to the one I gave you on the other side. So try solving, solve x squared plus 7x plus 12 is equals to 0 by completing square method. The values of x you should get again are just the same. X would be either negative 3 or negative 4. Now we want to solve this with the last method, that is a quadratic formula. Now, when solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, first you need to know the quadratic formula. By quadratic formula, that is a method we are using. So what is this quadratic formula? It's a very simple formula and very direct formula. So it says x equals to a negative of b plus or minus a square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything there, over 2a. When I say this, I hope we have already discussed here, and we said a quadratic equation takes the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So considering that we know the form that the quadratic equation takes, we compare this to our equation. So far our equation is x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equivalent to 0. So very quickly, before I start solving, we must agree that our a is 1, comma, our b is positive 5, and our c is positive 6. So if we agree about that, now we can solve. And the solving means we are substituting. So we would say there that our x is equivalent to, our b is 5, but we're saying negative of b, so we'll be saying negative 5, plus or minus the square root of a b squared. Our b is still 5, and therefore b squared will be writing there 5 squared, minus, well, let's suggest that we put a bracket there, so that we have our 4 multiplied by our a, which is 1, multiplied by our c, which is 6. I hope that is clear. And then everything is supposed to be over 2 multiplied by our a, which is 1. If I simplify this, I'll be taking it to this other side, and so we can say there that our x equals to a negative 5 plus or minus the square root of, we have 25, and we're saying it is 25 minus, we have there 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 6, that gives us 24. That is 4 times 6, because 1 times anything is just that thing. So we have here 2 times 1, which gives us just a 2. And so if we are to get the value of x again, this would be the same as us saying the first case there. It will be negative 5 plus or minus square root of 1, because 25 minus 24 gives you 1. Everything is again over 2. In simplified form, again, this becomes negative 5 plus or minus 1. Everything divided by 2. So x would either be equal to a negative 5 plus 1 over 2, or still the negative 5 minus 1 over 2. What do I mean? In the first case, I've taken negative 5 plus 1. In the second case, I've taken negative 5 minus 1. And therefore, if I was to go proceed about this, this would be a negative 5 plus 1 gives you a negative 4, all over 2. And on this other side, we have negative 5 minus 1 gives you a negative 6, all over 2. That means at the end of it all, we can simply say that x is either negative 2 or negative 3. Negative 2 or negative 3. Now, if you look at this and look at the values we had in the other methods, you discover that the values are the same, negative 2 and negative 3. Negative 2 and negative 3. Those are the roots for the equation.
Take my time, pull you in closer, be kissing you slower, you'd still be mine if I could turn back time.